Search me, God. Look through me so you can see everything. You know my every thought. Where could I go from your spirit? Or where could I run from your presence? Search me, God. Know my heart. Break me and know my thoughts. Lead me in your way.
Hey, well, great to see you guys today. My name is Justin. I'm one of the pastors here at Hope City. So glad that you guys are here. And if you are a guest, we're honored that you would spend part of your Sunday with us. We know that you could be a lot of different places today. And we're just thrilled that you would be here for this kickoff of our series. And as Trish said, we really want Hope City to be a place where you can belong before you believe. It's not just what we say. So as we go through the talk, even as we're going through worship, you maybe just stood there with your hands in your pockets, and maybe you're going to sit through the message with your arms crossed. Can I just say that's all right? Because there's going to be some things that we probably talk about today. You're going to go, I don't know if I agree with that, or I don't know if I believe that. And the great thing about the church, the thing I love most about, not this church, but the church, is that God meets us where we are on our journey. He doesn't ask us to get where someone else is. And so the mystical thing about this idea of Christianity is that through the power of God's Spirit, He will speak to your heart right where you're at. You don't have to pretend to be better than you really are. You don't have to measure up or stack up to someone else. And so we're just grateful that you're here. And I'm hoping that God's going to do some awesome things through this series. As Trish mentioned, you can follow along. Message notes are in the app. You can actually read the whole message, not the whole message, but you can read all the message notes like start to finish. So it's kind of a spoiler alert. So if you just want to get to the end, close in prayer on your own and head out, you can. You can go grab some coffee on the way out. But we're gonna talk about this idea of praying dangerous prayers. And I think for many of us, if we're really honest, prayer is like this amazing thing and it's this confusing thing. Like it's this amazing thing because we get to talk to God, right? Like that's just like a crazy thing. Like we get to talk to God through what Jesus did for us. We have the opportunity to communicate directly with God. So that's an amazing thing. Then it's this confusing, mystical aspect of life too, because there are certain times in our life where we pray to God and we talk to God and we sense God's presence and we not necessarily hear God's voice audibly, but we sense His direction. We get promptings from Him. We feel like we get answers from Him. Like we get to this place where we ask God to heal a family member, or we pray for a financial situation, or we pray about a job change, and it feels like God shows up in a miraculous way. It feels like God comes through in a way that only He could. But then there's some of us today that we're like, man, that's not how it works for me. Like I tried praying once, or I tried praying for a season, and I asked God to heal my mom, and that prayer didn't get answered. I asked God to save my job, or to save my marriage, or to save that relationship. And that prayer didn't get answered. I asked God to show up in a miraculous way like the church has always told me that He would, and for whatever reason, for whatever way, God did not come through like you thought He should. And so there's this confusing and sometimes frustrating dynamic when it comes to prayer, because do we have to perform for God in order to get Him to listen to us? And so what we're going to do over the next 3 weeks, I'm really excited about this series because we're going to look at 2 verses in the Bible that are going to set the table for what I think are 3 dangerous prayers that we can pray. And the reason that they're dangerous is we're building this whole series around this question. What if there are prayers that God will always answer? What if there are prayers that you can pray in your life where God will always show up, where God will always come through, where God will always answer your prayer in the way that it was asked? And that's kind of dangerous if you really think about it. Because if God is always going to come through, if God is always going to show up, if God is always going to answer this prayer, you better be sure about the prayer before you pray it. Because if you aren't sure about the prayer and you pray it, you better be careful what you ask, right? Like God is saying, hey, I'm eager to answer this prayer. I'm eager to answer what you pray in this instance. I want to show up in a way that makes my presence felt in your life. And so we're going to look at this passage of Scripture in Psalm chapter 139. And if you don't have a Bible, you can follow along on the screen. But it's the verse that was recited in that video that we just watched to open the message. And it says this, Psalm 139, verses 23 through 24. It says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life." Well, this morning, as we kick off the series, I just want to look at the first 8 words of that verse. Just the first 8 words. We're going to kind of unpack the rest of the verse as we go over the next few weeks. But the first 8 words are, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." And the dangerous prayer that I want us to come around together as a community, the dangerous prayer that I want us to really measure whether or not we have the courage to pray is this thought: know me, God. Search me, investigate me, know me. Do we really want God to know us? That's the kind of the question that we're going to be asking today. The dangerous prayer is, God, will you take a chance on me? Will you get to know me in a way that no one else can know me? And if you are willing to pray that prayer, that's a prayer that God will always answer. God has a desire to know you, sometimes even when we don't have a desire to be known. For those of you that grew up in multiple sibling homes, you know this about your home, and you know this if you have kids, you recognize this if you have multiple kids, that you can have kids that grow up in the same house, have the same parents, have the same bedroom for their entire life, eat the same 3 meals, go to the same school, do everything the same, and they have completely different personalities, right? Like they're nothing alike. Our 3 kids are nothing alike. All 3 of them are completely different from the other. Our oldest son is super analytical. He's very planned out. He has a 5-year plan for his 5-year plan, and he knows where he's going. He has a plan. He's meticulous in following that plan, and he wants everybody to know that he's on that plan. Our middle son, who's getting ready to graduate from high school, he doesn't know what he's going to do 5 minutes from now. All right, and so he's super spontaneous. He is very impulsive. Last night, about 11 o'clock, he's like, "Hey, I want to go out on a late-night adventure." I'm like, "Okay, it's late. As long as you're home by midnight, you can go do whatever you want," right? So like he just kind of just goes with the wind. He loves God, but he is super spontaneous, and that's what makes him endearing. What makes Micah endearing is he's very planned out, and they're completely different personality-wise. Now, our youngest son, Isaiah, he's what we call our silent assassin. All right, so he's the biggest, but he's the quietest. And he is he's the kindest. My other 2 kids are here, so that's not a slam. He's super kind. His heart is super soft toward other people. I just love that about him, but he's super shy. If you don't know him, he's super shy initially, and then he warms up and opens up over time, but he is very, very quiet and very unassuming. And that can be a huge advantage for him because he kind of flies under the radar. Right? So he can kind of instigate things, and nobody even blames him because he's so quiet. Like, "Oh, Isaiah couldn't do that. He's too quiet to do that," right? Well, when he was in 1st grade, Trish went to pick him up one afternoon from school, and he gets in the car, and she says, "Hey, buddy, how was your day?" And he says what every kid says, "Good," right? And she's like, "Well, what'd you guys do today?" He's like, "Oh, we didn't do anything." And she's like, "You didn't do anything? You were at school for 8 hours today, and you did nothing." He's like, "Well, we went outside and played on the playground, but that's about it. Other than that, just boring school stuff." So she drives home, and they get to the house, and Isaiah goes up to his room, and Tricia looks at her phone, and she has a message from the assistant principal at Isaiah's school. And she's like, "Mrs. Davis, we had an issue at the school. We need you to call us back. Could you please, give us a call at your earliest convenience? We need to talk through something that happened today." So Trish calls me and says, "Hey, have you talked to the school? They called me and I missed the call. I wonder if they called you or not to let you know what was going on." I said, "No, I have no idea what's going on. Why don't you call the school and then call me back?" So she calls the assistant principal. The assistant principal says, "We had an issue with Isaiah today. He was out on the playground playing, just like he said. And he and a friend of his decided that they didn't really want to walk all the way back to the school to go to the bathroom. And so they just dropped their drawers and peed on a tree." And so Trish is telling me this story, and I'm like, "I'm from Crawfordsville. Is that a bad thing? Like, I mean, what's going on there? I mean, is that wrong? You can't pee on a tree?" And she's like, "Justin, that's a huge deal." She's like, "It was a co-ed, recess. There's exposure things. He got written up. He had to sit in the principal's office for the entire afternoon. And yet he gets in the car. 'Hey, what's your day?' 'Good. What'd you do?' 'Nothing.' right? Like he didn't offer that up at all. And I said to Trish, I said, does he know that we know? And she said, no. I said, well, don't tell him until I get home. So we get through dinner, we sit down on the couch, and I said, hey, buddy, how was your day today? Good. Oh, that's awesome. What'd you guys do? Nothing. I said, you didn't pee on a tree and have to spend the afternoon in the principal's office? He's like, oh my gosh, you know that? I said, we know everything about you, all right? We know you. You can't hide from us. We find you, all right? We know this. And I said, Isaiah, I said, I'm not upset that you peed on a tree. I get that, okay? I've done that 100, maybe 1,000 times in my life, all right? That's not what upsets me. I said, what upsets me is that you would lie to me about it. And he's like, Dad, I didn't lie to you. He's like, I just didn't tell you. A few days later, Trish is getting ready to go on a cruise with a friend of hers, and she's like, hey, I need you to watch the boys. I'm going to the tanning bed. I said, what are you going to the tanning bed for? She's like, I got to get ready for the cruise. Apparently, you have to get tan before you go get tan, okay? And so I'm like, all right, so that's fine. And so she goes to the tanning bed. She comes back, and I'm like, whoa. She's like, what's the matter? I'm like, you are super dark. I'm like, that's like one session, right? She's like, yeah, I just went one time. I'm like, that is amazing. I said, I really resent the pigment of your skin and how dark it gets after one tanning session. That's incredible. She's like, Justin, this is a spray tan. I'm like, what? I said, what's a spray tan? She's like, they just spray paint you, brown. I'm like, wait a second. I said, you're not even tan? That's just an imitation tan? She's like, yeah. I'm like, no wonder our kid struggles with lying. Your life is a farce, right? Like you're completely a fake. You're not even really tan. You're just painted brown. Like I don't understand that, right? But my first grade son had a negotiation that went on in his mind when we asked him how his day went, and the negotiation was this. If I tell my parents how my day really went, maybe they won't love me. See, we all have, our greatest desire in life is to be known, but our greatest fear is that we won't be loved. The greatest desire that you have, what draws you to this place, what draws you to church, what draws you into relationships, what draws you into a relationship with God, why you feel God's presence when you worship is you long to be known. There's a part of your heart, there's a part of your soul that longs to be known by God, that longs to be known by friends, that longs to be known by the opposite sex. That's why you are drawn to dating relationships, that's why you're drawn into marriage. Like there's a part of us, our greatest desire in life, God created us for relationships, and our greatest desire is that we would be known, and our greatest fear is that we would not be loved. And sometimes those things collide in life, and we sacrifice being known for the sake of being loved, because we think if they really knew me, they wouldn't love me. And so I'm going to give them as much truth as they can handle about me so they won't reject me. And so often in our life, we struggle with this idea. We compromise truth in relationships, not because we want to be liars. We compromise truth in our relationships, both with God and with other people, because we want to be loved. And so what I want to do is I want to kind of draw this out and kind of illustrate it this way. I'm going to move this over here. Because I think for many of us, we know that this aspect of our life exists, and I'm going to try to turn that so everybody can see it. We know this aspect of our life exists. We just don't know how to quantify it. We don't know how to express it. And so I'm going to do a little artwork for you. Mark's a teacher, and he was disappointed in my artwork first service, so try to get a little better here. I got a D in art, so we're going to draw. Okay, this is. You say, what is that? That's the Rocky Mountains. No, I'm just joking. It's not. Okay. I want you to pretend for just a second, not pretend, I want you to imagine that your life, your soul, your heart, your relational world is like an iceberg, okay? So if you have to label your art, you're not good. It's an iceberg, okay? Now, what do we know about icebergs? Are they bigger or smaller below the surface? Bigger, right? So if we have water here, this might look like the tip of the iceberg, but it's really water, okay? So this is H2O, okay? Then you have the mass of the iceberg below that's way bigger. So there's so much less of the iceberg. It's why we have the term tip of the iceberg, because you see so much less of what's actually dangerous underneath the surface. What actually poses the greatest threat to things as they go by an iceberg isn't what's above the surface, isn't what's visible, it's what's actually below the surface that causes the greatest threat, and it's actually the biggest. But what's above the surface, if this is your heart, is what we call image. An image is what everyone sees. This is the most put together part of you. All right, this is the best looking parts of you. This is the house that you live in. This is the car that you drive. This is the corner office that you aspire to have someday. This is the subdivision you hope to live in someday. This is the person you want to marry someday. This is this is the golf course that you want to belong to someday. This is the school that you want your kids to go to someday. This is the most superficial part of you. It's the most shallow part of you. This is your image. It's what everyone sees. This is the part of you that if I met you out in the lobby, and by lobby I mean on the other side of that curtain, because that's where our lobby is in this church. But if I met you on the other side of the curtain and I said, hey, how are you doing? And you said, I'm doing great. I would have no context of whether or not you're doing great or not, because that's your image. And if we're really honest, it's what some of us stay up late at night thinking how we can build, how we can perfect, how we can make more impressive. Because this is the impressive part of you. This is the part of you that the most people in your life know and they're impressed by. Trish and I got married in 1995. We met in 1993. We started dating in 1994, and she had rejected me like 50 times, and which was really just broke my heart, crushed my soul. But anyway, I loved me. I wanted her to love me. She did not love me. And so I started asking her out over and over again, and she would not go out with me. And then I made a bet with a buddy of my basketball team that I could get her to go out with me by the end of the first semester. And where do Christians learn to gossip? Christian college. And so she found out about the bet before Twitter, before texting. She found out about the bet in like 10 minutes, and I lost the bet. And so we come back from Christmas break, and we had become really good friends in the first semester. And so she decided that she was going to go on a date with me. And man, did I want to impress her. I wanted this date to be phenomenal. I wanted it to be the best thing. I wanted her to come back from the date, walk into her roommate in her room and say, I cannot believe I was such an idiot first semester. He is amazing. I want to order the bridesmaids' dresses right now. That's the man of my dreams. I was such a fool to turn him down so many times. I'm so sorry. I love him already. Love at first date. It was unbelievable. I'm a horrible person for rejecting him. That was my vision for this date. I wanted to really be impressive. And so we were going to go to a place for dinner, and I'm like, you know what? There's a Hardee's, there's a Steak and Shake, and there's a Pizza Hut in Lincoln, Illinois, is where we went to college. I'm like, that is not impressive. We're going to go to Bloomington, Illinois, and we're going to go to this place called Bennigan's. All right, that's going to be really impressive. I don't know if you've ever been there or not. One closed down in Fishers years ago. That's how impressive it was. And so, but I'd never been to Bennigan's before. If you haven't been there, think really nice Chili's, okay? It's really nice Chili's. And so I had a 1988 Ford Taurus, which I called Doris the Taurus. I don't know if any of you named your cars. There's a special place in counseling for those of us that did. And so I had this Taurus that Trish had been in 100 times. It wasn't that impressive. I'm like, that's not going to woo her. That's not going to wow her. She's not going to be impressed by my Taurus. But my friend Eric, he had a convertible. And convertible is sexy. Convertible is romantic. Convertible is next level. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to borrow Eric's convertible. We're going to go to Bloomington. We're going to go to Bennigan's. And so I pull around to pick Trish up. I open up the door of the convertible. She gets in. I close the door. And the top of the convertible kind of shakes a little bit. I'm like, oh, is that not tied down? What's going on there? And I get in. I realize there's holes all in this convertible. It's a 1982 Chevy Caprice. White convertible, completely rusted out. Piece of junk, all right? The heat did not work. It's -7 in central Illinois in January, and we're going on this date, all right? But I had to have a convertible because this is going to be impressive. So we drive this convertible to Bloomington, freeze our butts off all the way there. We get to Bennigan's. I walk in. I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is a lot nicer than I anticipated. And I start calculating the amount of money I have in my pocket and the amount of, that the food might actually cost as I look at the menu. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have enough money to pay for this date. I don't have a debit card. There's no such thing as debit cards in that time. And I don't have a credit card. I was Dave Ramsey before Dave Ramsey. I just had cash. And I don't think I have enough cash to pay for this date. And I was starting to freak out. So we sit down, and the waitress is like, would you guys like an appetizer? I'm like, no appetizers here. We're good. No appetizers. We'll eat ramen noodles when we get back. If we're still hungry, but no appetizers. We're fine. She's like, well, can I take your drink order? And I'm like, water, trying to telepathically get it across the table. And Trish's like, I'll take a Diet Coke. I'm like, oh, that's $2.50 I didn't account for. And so she brings the $10 Diet Coke, sits it down in front of Trish, and I get my water, and she's like, well, can I take your order? Trisha says, I'll take a chicken Caesar salad. $14.99, all right? I'm like, what is the markup on a chicken Caesar salad? It's lettuce and chicken. Are you kidding me? And this was in 1994. That's like $126 in today's money, all right? I mean, that was a lot of money. I ordered the best thing on the menu, also the least expensive, Monte Cristo sandwich, all right? So $7.99. She brings our food. When I get nervous, I inhale food. So the fries were on our plate like 22 seconds. They were gone. When Trish gets nervous, she does not eat. So she sits there for the next hour taunting me, playing with this chicken Caesar salad. I'm like, woman, you will eat that salad and you will like it. I can't even pay for that, right? So the waitress comes. She's like, would you like a box of that? I'm like, yes, she's having that for breakfast. I'll personally oversee it, all right? And so she brings the box. We get in the car. We realize that Eric is out of gas. I had 56 cents left over from the date, all right? Which I left as her tip, okay? Now, before you judge, I heard some of you, don't judge me, all right? Because God has placed me in food service strategically over and over again since then to pay me back tenfold for stiffing that waitress on her tip, all right? So we get in Eric's car. I don't have any money now, and we are digging underneath the seats for loose change on our first date to get back to campus. It took me like 7 years after we got married to even tell Trish that story. I was so embarrassed by it. But that's image, right? We want people to be impressed by us. What happens, though, in our relational world is, as trust is built in a relationship, we lower this waterline and we have another layer of relating to people called the relational level. And relationships in our life, this is what a select group of people know about you. And the deeper the relationship, the more that they know. The deeper the relationship, the lower this waterline goes. So for some of us, this is what our friends know about us. This is what our coworkers know about us, right? So for some of us, this is what our family knows about us. If you're married or dating, this is what your boyfriend or girlfriend know about you, or your spouse knows about you. Right? As trust is built in a relationship, we lower this waterline.